Look at the register the next time you are in line. Past the pastries, there is a wall of gift cards, and above the counter, there is a prompt to reload your app balance. That rack is not decoration. By the spring of fiscal 2025, Starbucks was sitting on close to $1.85 billion in loaded gift cards and rewards balances. Customer money parked, not yet spent. A coffee chain does not need that much prepaid cash sitting in its accounts. A bank does. So here is the real question. When you tap Reload, what are you actually funding? And why did Starbucks just hand away 8,000 of its own stores in China? Figures here are as of research dated August 8, 2026, anchored mostly to Starbucks' fiscal 2025 results and the fiscal 2026 China transaction. Here's the sticky answer. Starbucks does not primarily sell coffee. It sells a prepaid claim on your next several visits, collected in advance, redeemed slowly, and protected by a real estate footprint big enough that walking away from the habit costs you more than it costs Starbucks. The espresso is the receipt. The subscription is the product. Start with who owns the building you are standing in. As of September 28, 2025, Starbucks ran 21,514 company-operated stores and licensed another 19,476, a nearly even split by count. But revenue tells the real story. Company-operated stores produced 83% of net revenue that year. In the United States, Starbucks does not run a franchise system the way McDonald's or Subway do, where an independent operator owns the four walls, hires the crew, and pays a royalty back up the chain. Starbucks keeps its core cafes on its own balance sheet, pays the capital costs itself, and employs the baristas directly. Licensing exists mainly for captive spaces, like airports, hospitals, and grocery stores, where Starbucks cannot easily plant its own flag, or where a landlord already controls access. Why absorb all that fixed cost instead of franchising it out? Because the actual product, the habit loop, only works if Starbucks controls every part of it: the drink recipe, the app, the loyalty math, the pace of service, the four walls themselves. Handing that to a franchisee means handing over the steering wheel on the one thing the whole model depends on: consistency of the experience, visit after visit. That's also why through 2025, Starbucks pushed a new service model called Green Apron across its entire U.S. company-operated fleet, standardizing how drinks get made and handed off. You cannot mandate a service standard like that across stores you don't own. Run the per-store math, and the fixed cost bet gets concrete. Company-operated stores generated roughly $30.7 billion of the $37.2 billion total in fiscal 2025, spread across those 21,514 locations. That's a rough proxy of about $1.4 million of sales per store. Simple division, no invented build costs. Against that, store operating expenses, labor, rent, the coffee itself, ran just over 55% of company-operated store revenue, up more than 4 percentage points from the year before, as Starbucks added staffing hours under its turnaround plan. The four walls are the expensive part of this business. The beans are not. Walk one actual purchase and the same pattern holds. A latte's ingredients, espresso, steamed milk, a cup, and a lid, are a small slice of a $5 to $7 ticket. Starbucks does not publish an exact cost breakdown per drink, but industry estimates commonly put beverage ingredient cost in the teens to mid-20% of the ticket, with labor and rent absorbing most of the rest. That's the split worth holding on to. The cup in your hand looks inexpensive to make, and it mostly is. What's expensive is the person who made it and the rent on the room you're standing in to drink it. Then the menu itself does quiet work on that same ticket. Tall, grande, venti, the middle size is priced to feel like the reasonable choice, even as the per-ounce math favors Starbucks. Every oat milk swap or extra shot after that adds $1 or $2 to a purchase that already felt decided before you reached the counter. And multiplied across tens of millions of transactions a week, that customization layer moves real revenue without ever touching the base price on the board. None of that ticket math matters much without repetition, and repetition is where the prepaid system does its real work. Roughly 34 million people were 90-day active Starbucks Rewards members in the United States through fiscal 2025, and Rewards members regularly accounted for more than half, edging towards 6 in 10 of tender dollars inside U.S. company-operated stores. About 31% of U.S. transactions came through mobile order. You are not deciding to buy coffee each morning. You already decided when you loaded the balance and joined the program. The purchase is just the balance catching up to the decision. The float on that decision is not trivial money. Starbucks carried close to $1.85 billion of stored value card and loyalty program liability through fiscal 2025, cash that customers have already handed over for drinks they have not yet claimed. In fiscal 2024, the company recognized $207.6 million of that as pure breakage, balances that simply drifted away and were never redeemed. That is not a rounding error. It is confirmation that the float is large enough that even the leftovers move the income statement. Delivery orders, still a small slice of the business, grew more than 25% year over year through fiscal 2025, which tells you the company is not trying to shrink that float. It is trying to widen the door it walks in through. If you are getting something useful from this so far, a like and a subscribe help keep these breakdowns coming. Now back to Starbucks. Company-operated stores and rewards float are only two layers of a taller stack. In 2018, Nestle paid Starbucks $7.15 billion upfront for the perpetual right to sell Starbucks packaged coffee and food service products everywhere outside the coffee houses themselves, ready to drink, grocery aisle, single serve. Starbucks books that payment as deferred revenue and recognizes it in slow, straight-line pieces over an estimated 40-year life of the arrangement, roughly $176.5 million a year, with several billion dollars of that original payment still sitting on the balance sheet unrecognized years after the check cleared. In fiscal 2025, the resulting channel development segment delivered $885 million of operating income on revenue that grew 6%, a margin profile the company-operated cafes, weighed down by rent and payroll, cannot come close to matching. Starbucks never has to staff a single grocery aisle to collect that money. Nestle does the shelving. Starbucks just owns the name on the bag. That contrast is the flywheel in miniature. Density makes the app worth opening. The app pulls tomorrow's purchase into today's balance. Rewards membership makes switching cost something, because leaving means abandoning stars and saved orders. Licensing and the Nestle Alliance harvest margin off the brand in places Starbucks never has to staff or lease. Every layer reinforces the others, and none of it depends on the coffee tasting better than the shop down the street. Owning that much of the experience also means owning the worst days of it. On April 12, 2018, two black men were arrested at a Philadelphia Starbucks after an employee called police while they waited, without ordering, for a business meeting. No charges were ever filed. The backlash was immediate and national. Starbucks closed more than 8,000 company-owned U.S. stores on the afternoon of May 29, 2018, at an estimated cost of $12 million to run racial bias training for roughly 175,000 employees. A licensor renting out its logo could have distanced itself from a single store's decisions. A company that owns the four walls could not and did not try to. The more recent strain has been less dramatic but longer running. Fiscal 2025 operating margin fell to 7.9%, down from 15% the year before, as Starbucks absorbed restructuring charges, added labor hours under its Back to Starbucks plan, and faced elevated coffee prices that its own finance chief warned would keep pressuring costs into 2026. Late in the fourth quarter, the company closed 627 underperforming coffee houses, more than 90% of them in North America, and admission that density alone had stopped paying for itself in every location. Global comparable sales still turned positive in the fourth quarter for the first time in 7 quarters, but the cost of getting there was real, and it landed on the same company-operated stores that make the control model expensive in the first place. China forced the biggest structural change of all. On November 3, 2025, Starbucks agreed to place its China retail business into a joint venture with Boyu Capital, an investment firm with deep roots in the Chinese market. The deal closed on March 30, 2026, with Starbucks announcing completion on April 2. Read the split carefully. Funds managed by Boyu now hold 60% of the venture. Starbucks holds 40% at an implied cash-free, debt-free enterprise value near $4 billion. Starbucks still owns and licenses the brand itself. Nearly 8,000 stores that used to be company-operated converted into licensed locations overnight, with a shared goal of reaching 20,000 across China over time. The accounting shift matters as much as the ownership split. Before the close, every yuan of China store revenue and every cost ran through Starbucks' own consolidated books, the same way U.S. company-operated stores do today. After it, that business came off the balance sheet entirely, replaced by a single line: Starbucks' share of the venture's profit recorded as income from an equity investee. Starbucks recognized a gain of roughly $536 million on the sale and used about $1.3 billion of the proceeds to buy back its own debt. The company will report lower China revenue from here forward and a cleaner margin on paper, the same trade licensing has always offered, now applied to one of its two largest markets. China and the United States together still make up around 6 in 10 of Starbucks stores worldwide. So this was never a side market getting restructured. It was one of the two pillars. Competitors can copy any single piece of this. A local roaster can match the coffee, sometimes beat it. A fast food chain can undercut the drive-through price. A regional chain can build its own app and its own point system. What is hard to copy is all of it running together. Tens of thousands of company-controlled stores enforcing one experience, a rewards base measured in tens of millions carrying real switching costs, a float approaching $2 billion funding operations before a single cup is poured, a packaged goods alliance paying out for another 30 decades without touching store labor, and now a capital partner absorbing the growth risk in China, while Starbucks keeps the brand and the royalty. Beat one layer and you have a decent cafe down the street. Beat all 5 at once and you have Starbucks. So next time you tap reload on the app, notice what you actually did. You did not buy a coffee. You extended a claim on your own future mornings and handed Starbucks the cash to fund them before you showed up. The machine holds as long as that claim keeps renewing itself, visit after visit, balance after balance, in stores expensive enough that only a company willing to own them outright would bother running that many at once. It weakens the moment convenience stops feeling like habit and starts feeling like a choice you could just as easily skip. And every closed store, every China store handed to a partner, is Starbucks quietly deciding where that line already got crossed. There's a written business guide linked in the description if you want this broken down further. If this helped you see how the machine actually works, like the video and subscribe to Terminal Value. Thanks for watching.